We're here to check out all the new Google announcements, including the Pixel 2. From day one, Google did a great job with their cameras, so I'm excited to see how the new one does. And they announced a ton of other stuff, including new versions of Google Home, so I want to play with that. So many toys here.
Those new toys included some very serious contenders for the title of top new flagship Android phone, Pixel 2, and my favorite of the night, the Pixel 2 XL. There's also the Google Home Mini, a smaller, cheaper, cuter version of their smart home speaker, and a big, handsome hi-fi speaker called the Home Max to compete with the Sonos and the Apple HomePod. It wasn't there to test, but it'll be available in December. There's also the Google Pixel Buds.
Hey Isabel, how's it going?
Hej Isabel, hur är läget?
Helt okej, tack.
Absolutely okay, thank you.
An update to the Daydream view with a few design tweaks, updated lenses, and new colors. Google's returned to the high-end Chromebook market with the Pixel Book and a little Pixel Book pen. And they also had donuts. Since I'm releasing this video a few days after the announcements, I'm going to assume you can go find the specs anywhere else, and instead I'm just going to talk to you about what I found interesting at the release event. So the Pixel runs stock Android Oreo, and although I'm not a full-time Android user, I really do like when phones feel as close to stock Android as possible. It's a quick way for Google phones to get on my good side right out of the gate. And I really don't want to bury the lead, so yes, the camera on this thing was amazing. On the back, it's a 12.2 megapixel camera with an f1.8 lens, and on the front, it's an 8 megapixel camera, but those numbers don't really tell the whole story. A lot of the cool stuff is happening with Google's processing AI, which adds up to the really sharp images, a lot of dynamic range for this small sensor, and exceptional performance in low light. But their coolest feature is definitely the ability to get bokeh out of a single lens. To do this, they're using dual pixels, which I'd be really curious to know how similar this is to Canon's dual pixel technology. Each pixel is basically split into two, and I'm amazed at the amount of depth information they can gather when these two measurements are only a few microns apart, compared to the dual camera iPhone where the lenses are a few millimeters apart. It seemed pretty accurate in my quick samples, and I'm excited to test it more thoroughly. It's also interesting because even on a full-frame DSLR, it's not easy to get that background blur with a wide-angle lens. You need to open up to a really wide aperture. Google Photos has been part of my workflow for a while, so I'm excited to see the integration of the unlimited free account for 3 years when you buy a Pixel. And what I didn't really like is the double flip wrist gesture to launch the Selfie Mode. It feels kind of unnatural, and I still think the best way to do it is with Samsung's flip up gesture. Gesture that they did get right is the squeeze to activate Google Assistant. It feels really natural, and I think it's a nice way to trigger your little voice in a box. It can't be remapped to any other functions, but if I do get used to this for the Assistant, then that might be fine. And speaking of voice assistant, I really liked the look of the new home speaker products, the Mini and the Max. Their design is a lot more clean and modern than the Amazon line of Echo products, and they worked as advertised. I can't wait to hear the sound quality out of the Max, which does intelligent EQ detection based on the sound of the room. And this is a great year for smart hi-fi speakers now that there's a few to choose from. Overall, I really like the design of this phone. The bezel feels a little bit too big on the Pixel, but on the Pixel XL it feels just right. And just like other products that Google has been announcing, the Pixel design language is decidedly non-techy, with a little bit of mid-century feel. And the two tones on the back of the phone kind of make it feel like glazed ceramics.
This is a very nice looking Android phone.
One thing that they got exactly right is that every phone has a black front on it regardless of the back color. With iPhones, this is the reason I usually choose black, because I don't want a white border around my screen. But now I could choose a color that I actually like the most. The screens are two varieties of always-on OLED, a 5-inch version and a 6-inch version. And the best feature that I almost missed is this Shazam-like song detection that is always listening to the ambient music around you and then just shows you the song title on the screen. The crazy part is that they told me that this is all happening on the chip, so it doesn't upload the data anywhere. So just like the Google Voice Assistant, this one chip is listening for a key phrase that it recognizes to activate it. Except in this case, that key phrase is over 70,000 songs that are stored on the device, and they're updated monthly. Looking at some photos that I had edited earlier that day, the screen seemed to be boosting some contrast and saturation, which I see a lot on Android phones. But I did read that on the XL, you can enable an sRGB mode that allows for more accurate color profiles, which I think is fantastic, although a P3 wider color gamut display would have been even more fantastic. The phone uses USB-C just like everything should. It supports fast charging, but unfortunately not wireless charging. It's water and dust resistant, but not waterproof. The stereo speakers sounded great. So in general, this phone doesn't have every flagship feature that you can see on the market in 2017, but with the Pixel 2, Google does seem to have nailed the most important ones.
So that's the end of our Google night. Thanks.